Hard Hat's all about showing up to play hard, doing what it takes to win.
If you want to cement legacy, win another.
He's your third center.
You don't want to pump him up too much, but it's hard not to.
This is maybe the most I've ever agreed with you.
Nick just disappeared as soon as we go live, of course. Guys, welcome to the Garden Report. We are all obviously a little late out of the gate here, and I guess we're going to see if Nick can figure out his issue. He was good to go. We were going to get Boomer Rage off the top. I'm not going to go straight into Boomer Rage yet. We'll wait for Nick to do that if he can figure out his technology. This is classic Boomer stuff here.
I got taken out of bed. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I can't see you. What happened?
I'm on the screen, I think. No?
I mean, I can't see you. I don't know if the chat can see you, then maybe that's
Can the chat see me?
Issue. But
this is a good night for Nick, they're going.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. We're just gonna how about maybe somebody can tell me, Amit, talk to me here. If we can see Nick or not, I'm not sure. Either way,
I'm actually
Celtics.
you could see me, Jimmy. I'm on the live stream.
Okay, they can see you. I can't see you. I don't know what's going on with me, but I'll just pretend to see you. Anyways, Celtics fall 123-114 to the Pacers. Kind of an ugly one here, at least defensively. Certainly, Bobby's going to come on here. If he hasn't pulled out all his hair, he's going to do that on screen because he was firing up a text storm beside himself about the Celtics defense. And Nick, I know you're a little bit upset about it too. We all should be. I mean, this is, again, the Celtics come out 2 days ago, beat the crap out of the Pacers Friday night. And we kind of call off the dogs a little bit, hold off on hitting the panic button. But then we say, if they go out and lose again a day from now, what did Friday even mean? So there's some bad habits starting to form here. Bobby's at the game. Noah's at the game. Nick was watching it. But Nick, before we get to
Nick was clearly in bed.
Nick was clearly in bed. But before we get to Nick, it's the Boomer Age. It's the Boomer Age. Nick, hit me with what's on your mind after watching this game? What is the problem with this team?
They just seem to be, well, first of all, the lack of defense. They just seem to be in that stretch that usually comes right after the All-Star break, Jimmy, where it's kind of like the winter doldrums. They're hitting it now. The sad thing, huh?
It's too soon to hit that.
That's where I was going. It's just a bit too soon for that to happen, especially at home. The last two, I think, they won against the Pacers last game convincingly, but two of the last three, I think, were losses at home. And that bothers me. And you know what bothers me most is Jimmy watching Bobby just completely panic on this. I'm not panicked. You put up the Boomer Age thing. Sorry, guys. Psych. I'm not raging out tonight.
Boring.
I'm just not. I mean, I look at it
at some point. I mean, how many losses do you have to see? They're 23-9 now. I think they've lost 6 games in December, limping into the new year. I mean, limping into the new year. This is not how you want to go out. This is not, the way to end things after an unbelievable calendar year.
Jimmy, you knew at some point the 3-point shot was going to cool off. Clearly, it did here again tonight. It's inconsistent. We're old school. We're boomers, man. Don't put me with you. You are, bro. I mean, the young kids, that's what they do, man. They put you, if you're over 25, you're a boomer now. So, I mean, the truth is, I think live with the 3, die with the 3. And you're seeing a lot of that. I know it's old school, kind of old man take, but you're seeing that right now. And will they come back? Will they have, catch their fire from 3? Yeah, they will again, and it'll turn around. But what's bothersome, I think, is the 3-point shot being off is hurting their defense, and it's just kind of been a slippery slope to where they're playing that kind of mediocre, complacent style basketball. Not really what were they thinking tonight that after they destroyed Indiana on Friday that Indiana was just not going to show up? You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of what it looked like.
I mean, it's the NBA. I can't imagine they thought that. I just think, again,
But it's the NBA. Yeah. What do you mean? Have you heard anything about the ratings lately, Jimmy?
Well, if you're the Celtics team, you know the teams are showing up to play against you, and I think if you're the Celtics, you rely too much on your offense. And Sherrod, I think, just is in the room. Sherrod, give me a thumbs up if you're good to go. Okay,
there's
thumbs
the professor.
up.
I'm good to go.
Nick, Nick, can you hop off and reload your page? Because I want to be able to see you.
Yes.
Make sure it's all good. So just reload, hop back on. Love to get a couple more of your takes before. But Sherrod Blakely in the building. Thanks for jumping on with us, Sherrod. Unfortunately, not a great one at the TD Garden tonight after Friday's win against Indy. A tale of two games here. I started off the show with Boomer Age for Nick. He didn't bite though. He didn't bite on it. He said really? he's not raging. He's not panicking. Are you in the Gelso category right now where you just, you know what, another loss, it is what it is. They just got to write a couple of things and they'll be fine? Or is there starting to be, I'm not saying panic mode here, but there's a lot of people in the chat saying it's not panic, it's frustration. Where do you kind of fall on this whole scale of whether it's panic, frustration, concern, or is it just, another regular season game? It won't matter in the end.
I'm at the concern level. I'm not ready to panic yet just because they still, by all accounts, are one of the better teams, if not the best team in the NBA. They're still the defending champs. They're just not playing like it. The concern that I have right now has to do more with them having this false sense of we can just turn it on when we want to. It feels like there's some flip the switch action going on here where, to me, the last two games are an absolute case study in what flip the switch looks like. When they lost a couple of games and Indiana's coming to the town, what do? They beat the crap out of them. And now, right, reminding people just how good they are, then you have a game like tonight where they weren't nearly as good. They weren't nearly as effective. You look at a lot of the shots that they had were good looks. They just didn't go down. They just didn't play with the same level of focus towards greatness that we saw in the previous game against Indiana, and we've seen for a large part of the season. I'm not ready to panic because I don't think there's anything they can do from a personnel standpoint that will all of a sudden make every game winnable. I think what they're going through now is they need to shake this flip the switch thing, because I do feel that some of that is creeping in, which, to be honest with you, Jimmy, I'm not surprised, because when you win a championship, you know what it's like to be at the top of the mountaintop. And that is still their focus. And the regular season becomes a really difficult terrain for most defending champions, because they know that in the grand scheme of things, what they do in May and June is going to matter so much more than what they do in November and December.
Sure. And we're going to hear, the show started a bit late, so we didn't get Joe live, but we got Jackson and Amit working behind the scenes here to toss some good clips up. So we're going to go to a Joe bite that I think Bobby asked to Joe Mazzulla here. We'll see what Joe had to say. Is that going to work?
Against this team, defense got back on track a little bit tonight. They were able to get to the rim quite a bit. Offensive rebounding. What do you see from the defense tonight?
Yeah, they were able to spread us and drive us. And it's one of the best things that we do. And I think the difference was last game, obviously they were down them hard and they were on the second night of a back-to-back. And so tonight, I think they had more points in transition in the first half than they did in the entire game. And when you're not playing well defensively, that's on everybody. It's on the staff. It's on the coaches. It's on the players. So just got to continue to work at it.
You guys tried a couple of different things. Luke, kind of hedging off some guys. What is it going to take for the defense to get back on track a little bit?
Luke wasn't in hedge. It might have been a miscommunication in coverage, but it wasn't a hedge there. We showed a little zone, showed a little 15, showed a little 14. So, just got to do a better job. Got to do a better job coaching defense. Got to do a better job in our individual defense. Got to do a better job in our team defense.
So Mazzulla at least seems to be a little bit more critical tonight than he has in maybe in some other games, and at least accepting that they weren't doing the things that they set out to do, especially on that defensive end there, and maybe some miscommunication. Bobby was steaming last show, Sherrod, because Mazzulla insinuated that maybe the reporters or fans don't see the game the way that, they see it. So they don't really know ball, I guess, if you will. But to Bobby's point, he's like, you don't really have to know ball to that extent to see what's going wrong out there or to see when things aren't going the way they're supposed to go. So tonight would be a number of examples. And when you start this game, the very beginning, Indy was pretty much getting whatever they wanted, not just in the beginning of the game, but throughout the game. But that's when it started right off the bat, whatever they wanted in the paint. I mean, and whether it was Nembhard or a couple other guys there that hit some big threes, they were attacking the paint and kind of instilling a little bit of physicality in their will in there. We've seen that happen against this Celtics team in the past. The Celtics are going to just keep doing their thing at the 3-point line. The opposing team either is going to try to match that, which the Pacers did not try to do tonight, or they're going to try to shoot from a high percentage inside, which is what ended up being the case for Indy early on in this one. And they did hit some monster outside shots in the fourth quarter as the Celtics brought this to like a one-possession game. Then Indy goes on that big run, hit a couple outside shots. Prior to that, though, it was the inside game that was really helping out Indy, it seemed. Yeah,
the inside game and getting to the free throw line. Those are the two keys for Indiana in this game. And they were aggressive at both ends of the floor. You look at the way they were really just kind of, doubling and really getting hands in the face of Tatum. Jaylen Brown, I thought, had a really good playmaking first half and scoring. And he not only was he getting buckets, but he was also getting his teammates involved when Indiana's defense reacted to his dribble drive game. But this was a game where you don't have to be John Wooden or a Hall of Fame coach to realize that there was a lack of attention to detail across the board on the Celtics' part. When you're looking at guys getting wide open to lightly contested shots, that's a lack of attention to detail. When you've got guys, getting to spots that they're not necessarily their sweet spots, but they're getting there anyway without making efforts to get to where they know they're at their best shooting the ball, attention to detail. When guys are making, unforced turnovers, there was just a long laundry list of mishaps on the Celtics part that you certainly got to give Indiana its due. They certainly had a role in that, but a lot of the mistakes that Boston made were self-inflicted. And when you start to dissect those self-inflicted mistakes, a lot of it comes down to just a lack of attention to detail. And that's not something that, you can't necessarily put that on the coach. You can't put that on the players. You put it on the team because if they're not having as much attention to detail as they should, at some point you as a coach have to let them know that. And there just didn't seem to be the level of connectivity that you need to have when you're going through struggles like they went through most of this game. And they get a shot. They almost got bailed out with their, elite shot making, but the game completely, was a wrap after Sam Hauser missed that 1-3 that would have made it like a 1-point game, and Indiana soon pushed it back up to double digits, and that was pretty much it. It was a wrap.
Noah, talk us off the ledge here. You're the last person to hit the panic button. We know you're nowhere near it, but you are also an astute basketball mind. You can't be thrilled using your big basketball brain. You cannot be thrilled by what you're seeing out of this Celtics team as of late. At least tell us that.
Definitely not thrilled.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me okay?
We can. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I think at this point, there's a conversation that needs to be had on the defensive end that requires, I almost want to, there was a couple of plays where I went back and rewatched them multiple times, and it's almost like there was multiple defensive miscommunications, and it's weird because we know this is a team that's familiar with one another. We know that it's not like there's new personnel that don't know the schemes, but even so, it's pretty hard to understand why all of a sudden the same lineups that last year were really strong defensively are not. And Joe said it was a combination of effort and focus when asked specifically about those two as options. I also think there's a personnel thing where you're missing Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis, two of the guys that made that defense so good last year. And then there's guys like Sam Hauser, who I thought really struggled in the defensive end tonight. I think individually, a number of people have taken a dip. There were moments where Peyton Pritchard was making costly defensive mistakes. Derrick White, I feel like that he's had some moments defensively that are out of character. So a lot of it is just individually, I think people are not playing to the same level that they were playing last season on that end. And I don't know, that to me is the story of this game. And though Joe was asked specifically, is the common denominator in these losses defense? And he said no, that sometimes it's been defense, sometimes it's been other things. To me, that's what it's felt like, because offensively, like, I think they've done enough to get these wins. And last year, these wins would have come. Like tonight, they were shooting 50%. And yeah, they were still losing the entire game. So that's what stood out to me, is just defensively. Like, I think there's it's undeniable at this point.
So it seemed like, and I mentioned this earlier to Sherrod, it seemed like Joe was a little bit more able to admit some of their shortcomings today than he has in past games. Sherrod, you're muted. I don't know what you said.
It's kind of hard to not acknowledge their shortcomings. And to Noah's point earlier, I think we've seen enough basketball to know that if you're playing exceptionally well at the offensive end or the defensive end, which side of the ball are you going to have the best chance of win if the other side isn't great? It's great defense. If your defense is really good and your offense is not that great, you have a much greater chance of winning if those roles were reversed. This team, they're not playing great defense right now. I don't know why that's such a difficult pill for Joe to swallow at this point. It's pretty clear and obvious that it's not happening. The reasons behind it, that's for him to figure out. That's part of his pay grade to figure that out. But they're not playing great defense. And I think, Noah, the point that you made earlier, I think is a big part of it. When you don't have Jrue Holiday and you don't have Porzingis, two guys that are very important pieces to your defense. And the one thing we have to keep in mind is that when you're shorthanded, at some point, you're going to experience diminishing returns on the guys who are filling in. At some point, you're going to be reminded as to why that player isn't a starter and why this guy plays usually 25 to 30 minutes as opposed to 35 minutes, which we're asking him to do now. Those things begin to creep into wins and losses, and I think we're seeing that with the Celtics. I don't think it's a coincidence that they've struggled of late at the same time where Jrue Holiday and or Porzingis have been kind of in and out of the lineup and being available to play. I don't think it's just a coincidence that's happening. And if you're the Celtics, you just got to ride this storm out and just hope that when the games truly matter most, which is the playoffs, you can have your full complement of players. Because when you look at this Celtics team and how they're playing now without those two key components, it's not good basketball. It's okay, but it's not good. It's not great. And then you start looking at the teams around them. I mean, like right now, New York, I believe, is a game behind Boston for number 2 in the East. You look at some of the other teams. You look at Orlando. You look at this Indiana team. They're not having a great season, but you could potentially see them in the first round of the playoffs. So the Celtics, they really need to figure out a way to just ride this storm out, however long it's going to be without Jrue and Porzingis, and hope that they can rack up some wins in the process, because things in the East are starting to tighten up for them in a way that I don't think they were expecting.
Well, I mean, you mentioned, and of course, you can't really mention this one without talking about the fact that Porzingis and Holiday are out, two guys that they acquired last year for a reason to put them over the top. I mean, let's be honest. The Celtics knew, Brad Stevens knew that they needed to go out and get some additional help for Tatum and Brown. It was maybe a tough decision, maybe not for Marcus Smart to be the guy out. I think everybody would do everything the same way over again based on how things worked out. But now you're starting to see stuff like Holiday be banged up a little bit. Hauser's been in and out of the lineup, and now he plays tonight. But as Noah mentioned earlier, was getting absolutely blown by on defense. Does that have anything to do with him playing through an injury, or maybe being a little bit slower, or not being really in the game speed or game shape that he needs to be in? These are all little things that you didn't really deal with last year. Yeah, you dealt with Porzingis, obviously, last year in and out of the lineup, and they were able to win without Porzingis in the lineup last year. Tatum starts off ice cold, and this one kind of puts you behind a little bit. You're relying on Brown again to carry the load offensively. Al Horford had a really rough night offensively for them. He was a negative for them tonight. Good to see Pritchard with another bounce back performance and find his shot. But again, late in that game, Indy went on there. I think the Celtics brought it to 2, and I think Indy went on maybe an 11-0 run, whether it was Nemard or who's the guy who hit a couple threes for them? Sherrod.
Sherrod
coming out of the clouds with a couple of big shots in that fourth quarter. And the Pacers, you got to give them credit. They just, after kind of getting embarrassed on their home court on Friday, they come out here and repay the Celtics in a big way. Now, this Celtics team, again, it's been up and down with them all month. Mm-hmm. And so I again, you're not slamming the panic button, but all of a sudden a month goes by and you've got this inconsistent basketball. It kind of happens, right under your nose, but you go, okay, not a big deal. Okay, not a big deal. Oh, they won again. Everything's fine. Oh, another loss. And all of a sudden you're barely scratching 500 this month and going into January. And you mentioned it, Sherrod. There's some talent across the East. They're going out west now to play some big games. And actually, Joe Mazzulla was asked about the schedule after the game today. And we have that clip. We'll put it up right now if you guys want to toss it up, Jackson.
Getting back on track defensively, how tough is that to balance? Now you guys are in a pretty brutal schedule coming up here after the home game run, say, for a lot of games. How tough is that to kind of get everyone together where you're shorthanded and you're not going to have a lot of practice time here, it seems like?
I'm actually really excited about it. It's going to be fun. It's going to be great.
Yep, there you go.
So
that's what I'm talking about, Joe. That's what I'm talking about.
There's the Joe. That's
Joe what I want.
There's the Joe we know. So we'll get into the schedule.
I think this. I agree with Joe. I think this trip's going to be good for them because part of these struggles I will attribute to, like, they have, I know that Joe said last game he doesn't like when we use the words effort and those, just kind of blame that for why things are going wrong. But I don't think they've been inspired by the games that they've been playing here at the Garden. And Christmas Day was a little bit of an anomaly because it's literally Christmas Day on national television, and I think everybody should get up for that. But ultimately, like, if they go out west and they don't find a way to elevate their play, like, then I think we're talking about this team being maybe not who we thought they were at the beginning of the season, versus, maybe this team, is able to turn it around because they're going on the road and because they're realizing, like, they kind of dropped a lot of really winnable games at home in December. So I could see this trip actually being good for them. But I've said from the beginning, like, I think I will feel a lot more certain one way or another in 2 weeks when they're done with these, this road trip.
Yeah, this road trip is kind of the elixir that will serve as a truth serum for who this team really is. If they're able to come through this West Coast trip and look pretty good, win most, if not all, those games, then we'll look back at December and think, like, well, they just really weren't pushed the way they should. Who's coming? We got some coming to the podium.
We got Derrick White coming to the podium. We'll see what Mr. White has to say here.
Does he have his beer with him? That's the real $1 million.
Am I putting him up, or is someone else putting him up? Okay.
Honestly, Friday was really good, and especially when you play the same team twice in a row.
Take your hand off your face, Derrick.
You win like that, team members, and so
he's like,
but obviously there's a lot of stuff that we gotta do better. We gotta improve on, and we're gonna watch the film, and we gotta learn.
And then Jordan Walsh set or tied career highs on Friday. Had the big block in the fourth.
Jordan Walsh.
What do you see from him overall this season?
Yeah, he's just a guy that's
Joe shot that question.
Jordan Walsh
during practice, just someone that wants to learn and get better. And then when his number is called, he's going in there. He's playing really hard, and he's just doing a lot of things activity wise. And so it's nice to see.
Derrick, what commonalities have you seen, in the team losing 4 out of the last 6 games in terms of what has led to those losses, and what do you feel can be gained as a group from facing
defense?
A little
Come on, Derrick. Tell the truth.
Yeah, I think this might be the toughest stretch that I've been on since I've been here in the Celtics. So I'm just gonna bring us closer together. Just gotta know that everybody's got their best interest in mind, and just have each other's back. And so I just think it's gonna bring us closer. There's ups and downs through every season, so we're in one of those downs, and we just gotta figure it out together.
What do you notice as well about the challenges of trying to defend as champions, giving what you get from the opponent on a night-in, night-out basis, particularly with the intensity which you guys are defended and have to kind of fight through that?
Yeah, I think it's a big game every time we're playing against anybody. We knew that going into the season. You can see it, like, just the way teams are just getting after it, and so we just got to step up to the challenge.
Derrick, you mentioned this is the toughest stretch you've been. What about your group makes you confident that you'll be able to get past this? Like it's a very unique spot, considering it is something you haven't had to deal with as a team in the past year.
Just trust the character in the locker room. All the type of guys that are in that locker room, and those are the type of guys I want to go to war with. So I'm confident in that.
And then Joe mentioned inconsistencies on the defensive end. Do you think those are stemming from effort, focus, or communication? Like, where do you think some of those inconsistencies might be stemming from for you guys?
I don't want to say effort. I mean, obviously there's definitely low points, but just a little bit of everything. Some possessions were flying around, and then the next possession we just give up a layup or whatever it might be. So we just gotta be, like I said, more consistent, possession after possession. I mean, it's tough to get transition if you're taking it out every time.
Derrick, is this a matter of you guys kind of like fighting yourselves versus fighting the opponent? I mean, is it something where you guys, everybody knows what you're capable of, because you guys know what you're capable of, but you're not, at least right now, living up to that? Is this just an internal challenge type of thing?
Yeah. I mean, it's a long season, and we know there's going to be ups and there's going to be downs, but it's definitely the aspect of just understanding the potential that we have, and you just got to get back to playing the way that we all know we can play, and just do it on a consistent basis. So, and it's something we just got to learn, and we just got to get out of it together.
You know, urgency is tough in December, January. That's, like you said, it's a long season. You're planning on playing until June. So, but also that urgency does need to be there, though, right? Because you don't want to slip too far out of first. You don't want to have bad habits, right?
Yeah, I mean, you just creating habits for the whole year, and I mean, obviously you want to win every game, and you want to be first place, and you want to do all these things, but we just gotta have that mindset is whatever it takes, and just understand that it is still December, but these habits will carry over, so we got to correct them quickly.
Derrick, Joe's mentioned taking away tendencies.
Bobby.
Being a challenge for you guys defensively at times through the stretch. Jaylen said miscommunications are popping up. Where do you kind of see that on the floor right now, and what are some ways to kind of fix that?
I just think, I mean, a lot of offense is just a lot of movement, a lot of trying to cause confusion, and that's just really testing the communication on the defensive side, and then obviously just knowing the scout, knowing what teams like to do, and that usually what we do really well is try to force them to do something they don't want to do, but we're allowing them to get to what they want to do. So I mean, just something that we just got to lock into that aspect of the scout, and then obviously the communication and flying around after that.
Oh, Derrick, over the course of a long season, just what's the balance of keeping things fresh and also just staying locked in on good habits? And what are some things you personally like to do when you feel like you need a refresh?
I mean, when times are tough, I mean, it's just nice to know like this is a game that we got to have fun with it. Obviously, we want to play at a high level, but when we have that joy, that competitive joy that we talk about, and just having fun, playing the game, sharing the ball, making the right read. And so when times are tough, it's kind of like you're running uphill, but just got to get back to what the game's all about, is just having that joy.
Joy to the world. Yes, Derrick. All right. That was Derrick White. Sullen. I would say a little downtrodden Derrick White. There's not a whole lot of reason to be pumped after that game. And you know what? Derrick White said something is interesting. It's probably the toughest stretch that he's been a part of on this Celtics team. And that includes, a couple seasons now, right? Not just last year and this year, but he was on the team prior to that. And this is also going to be obviously for Joe Mazzulla, who jumped on last year and won a championship, this is the toughest stretch for him. It's going to be interesting to see how he handles this adversity, kind of his first real, in the driver's seat situation of being the head coach, and now there's a little bit of a history here of going back a month to the up and down nature of this Celtics team. So what is Joe Mazzulla going to have to do now to try to right that ship? Noah mentioned the fact that they do go on the road, and sometimes when you go on the road, you can kind of band together and just get away from the distractions and everything, especially around the holidays. Everybody knows family, everyone at the holidays bothering you and all the stress. Get away with the team, sort of zone in and maybe get things back on track. That's the hope anyways. No, is there something that you really think the Celtics should hone in on? And if they want to turn things around here, they do have one more game, obviously at home here against, New Year's Eve in Toronto, but then they hit the road. Is there something that you're going to be looking for this team to do differently or better than they have been? Or is it just get healthy and, play harder on defense?
Honestly, I like the changes that were made in the first Pacers game where Joe let Jaylen and Jayson both play the entire first quarter, that he utilized Jordan Walsh, who I think has been a bright spot through this most recent stretch defensively. And so to me, it's like, I don't know that there's much from a substitution pattern. Like, I like the idea of just mixing it up and just giving somebody fresh a chance, but there's nobody that's sitting on the bench that I'm like, this is the guy that is going to solve all your problems. Ultimately, I think they need to just individually take more pride in their defense. And that sounds like a little bit of a cop out, but I don't know that there's another way around it. I'm watching the same guys that I've seen at various points this season and definitely consistently last season not play the same level of defense than we're used to seeing. And Joe talked a lot about tendencies and that being the main focus. And I think that's something that we don't, as viewers, we're not studying each player's tendencies and then observing when Derrick White's hip is turned when Halliburton's going to his left and that sort of thing. But that's what it comes down to ultimately. And I think right now, this was a bad December. Derrick White said it because it is, it's since he got traded to Boston, there hasn't been a stretch during the regular season like this at all. Nothing. Yeah. I mean, really nothing like it. And so I think you're going to have to see guys individually make the decision to play harder, be more focused, focus on the details. And I don't know if it's going to happen or not right now, but I think it has to, if they're going to turn it around. I don't think it's going to be anything other than that individual pride. And maybe it's them having a players meeting where somebody kind of sets the tone. I don't know.
You can't have a players meeting. That's
is that bad?
That's the death of a team. No,
you think?
You can't have a players only meeting. When does a players only meeting led to a great season? Usually that's the last ditch effort.
Well, to me, the players only meetings, they only have value if there's something truly devastatingly bad going on. There's some kind of, I think what's happening now more than anything, they just have to play better. And it sounds simple, but it's really about paying attention to details, the little things. That's what's killing these guys. It's not like you've got guys who are fighting each other, players who don't like each other. You don't have a lot of those clearly obvious dynamics that are detrimental to your team's success. It just looks, watching them play, it looks as though they're just not locking in as much as they used to or as much as they need to. And to me, a players only meeting isn't going to help.
Oh my God.
In fact,
Noah hit us with
that would make it worse.
Noah hit us with the players only meeting and then bounced. She just dropped a bomb.
She just dropped a grenade and just ran.
She just was like, I'm going to leave this here and see ya. And now we're left with the shrapnel of a players only. Listen, nobody on the show, and Noah wasn't saying, I don't want to speak for Noah. I don't think she was suggesting a players only meeting. No. That would be a bit extreme for a team that, yes, is 23-9. And again, you know what it is? This team, what it is, Sherrod, is they look mortal. Whereas last year and the way they started this year, it looked like it was their league and everyone else was just kind of, going through the motions. Cavs had other plans, right? I mean, the way they started things off. You've got a team like the Knicks that's starting to come around here, right? Towns is coming into his own on that Knicks team. They're going to be a tough out regardless. Pacers, you don't know what you're going to get from them on any given night. There's some teams out in the East right now. Milwaukee's coming around. They're going to be tough outs. And now they're going to go out West and they're going to play a Rockets team that is one of the surprise teams, of the season for at least, I would say, majority of basketball fans. I'm sure there were some people out there that know what Ime was capable of and know what that young Rockets team could be capable of. But I don't think anyone expected them to be where they are. So they're going to go there. They're also an interesting one to me is when they go to Denver, because Denver is like, it's almost like the ghost of Christmas past. Like Denver used to be like the Celtics in a way, right, Sherrod? The team that was the team to beat. Then that second year dealt with some injuries, dealt with some tiredness, lost some legs in the playoffs, and they got, I think you could say they kind of got upset in the playoffs, right? And now they're trying to find it in the third year here, right? They're trying to find where they're at, and they've had some issues. You know, Murray's been inconsistent. Obviously, Jokic is doing his thing still, but they don't have enough, it seems, right now. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic to see the Celtics go to Denver and see how that whole thing plays out. But the good news is it is still December. We're not going into the playoffs right now with the Celtics playing this level of basketball. I would be far more concerned if that was the case, because I do think you want to have good habits going into the playoffs. And obviously you want to be healthy. You don't want to be dealing with guys coming in and out of lineups. If we're talking about Holiday and Porzingis unhealthy going into the playoffs, whole different story and whole different, outlook on things, I think, because you really do need those players. And Holiday's a guy that even when he has been in the lineup this year, he's been certainly, at least on the offensive side of things, has not been the same player. I think, he was near automatic from that corner 3-point line last year. Now he's below what you would expect him to be. So that's something to, obviously note. But you need what Holiday gives you on the defensive side of things. When him and White are in there, they're the best defensive backcourt in the NBA. Now you've got Pritchard coming off the bench, who's just as much of a hound defensively. Never mind what he's given you offensively now. And Pritchard had a good night tonight too. I think he was 21 points tonight. The 3-point shot was there. And now I think that's back-to-back performances where he's kind of found his shot again. So John mentioned it last show, Sherrod. He said, is Pritchard a guy, what's the Pritchard that you can expect to see? Is it the one from last season or the one from this season? And insinuating that the guy that we're seeing this season is, a borderline, a starter, could be a starter on a lot of teams, and a guy that you're relying on way more than you did last season. And even in the playoffs last season, I mean, aside from a couple of those circus shots, it wasn't like Pritchard was this massive part of that rotation. Not going to be the case this year. And Pritchard, again, here's the line with him: 7 of 13, 5 of 8 from 3, 4 boards, 3 assists, 2 turnovers, a -2. Obviously, I think the fourth quarter had a little bit something to do with that. But Pritchard was one of the brighter spots tonight for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're going to need him throughout the course of the season. And I do think that he last year in the playoffs, we saw glimpses of what he could be. And the only difference I see really from that Pritchard and what we're seeing now is just more consistency and more comfort in the role that he has carved out for himself. And frankly, the Celtics are comfortable with him playing, and that is to be a guy that can make shots coming off the bench. When Pritchard steps on the floor, he is on the scouting report as a guy that they need to limit his shot taking, because he's proven himself to be very good at that part of the game. And it's been a big part of why the Celtics have a 23-9 record and why he is among the front runners for this year's 6th Man of the Year award. Hey there, Bobby.
Bobby Manning in the building. Bobby, you were in the press conference for Joe. I think you were there for Derrick White. Anybody? Were you in the locker room at all? Or were you sticking by the press conference?
Yeah, we got Jaylen in the locker room, and I'm glad we did, because he's been, in many ways, their defensive spokesperson over the last couple of years here. Obviously, he's trying to set a tone on that end and stress that end through the bad days in 2023 and then the great days in 2024. And I keep throwing out that year, Jimmy, and I texted you guys, is that first 4 losses and 6-game stretches since 2023. And that was later in the year. You mentioned they're not getting into the playoffs yet. It's still early. But you don't want to see that pop up, this level of inconsistency. And they had that great performance on Friday. Pacers get a couple guys back, namely Nembhard, who hurt them early. And this was, I mean, I don't want to go too far here, but this is a pretty disgraceful performance defensively.
Wow. Disgraceful.
I mean, layups in transition, uncontested layups in the half court. Early on, Nembhard got to shoot a practice jumper on the baseline there. So just not great effort, not great attention to detail. I know
Bobby,
you guys heard Joe talk about that.
I don't want to cut you off, but I
But
got.
yeah, let's hear what Tatum's thinking.
Let's hear what Tatum's got to say here. Hold that thought, Bobby.
Understand we played a part in where we're at right now, and we just got to be better.
Jayson, has it been harder to reestablish yourselves as, the preeminent team in the league than you anticipated? Obviously, you knew you were going to get everybody's best on a night-in, basis, but has it been harder to get back to the top and reestablish yourselves this year?
I mean, every season presents its own challenges, and this year is no different. I guess getting everybody's best shot, but we should be used to that. It's been like that for the last few years, and we just got to start, swinging first. We got to get back to that.
Jayson, Joe mentioned the inconsistencies on the defensive end. Where do you think those are stemming from? Is it more effort, focus? Like, where do you think some of that inconsistency defensively is coming from for you guys lately?
I think we got to communicate better. All 5 guys got to be on the same page. Too many breakdowns. And I think if we just, communicate and talk a little bit better, that'll help with a lot of things.
And then Derrick mentioned this might be the toughest stretch he's been through since he's been with the Celtics. It feels like you guys have had a pretty high level of consistency over the years. It feels like you guys have also built a persona of just even keeled, not too high, not too low. How do you avoid that frustration in a time like this that feels like you so rarely lose this many in such a short span? How do you avoid that frustration seeping in?
I think being honest with yourself, understand it's a long season. We got a lot of basketball left. We're so far from our ultimate goal, right? It's so far down the road. And we've had some good moments this year and some not so good ones. It's my 8th year, and every year there's good moments and not so good moments. It's all how you navigate the roller coaster of a season. Some stretches are better than others. You feel better during certain stretches than you do others, and it's just part of being in the NBA.
Jayson, what's the key to stopping dribble penetration, like Halliburton tonight, Maxey a couple nights ago? What's the key to kind of making a statement with that?
Playing better defense, helping one another.
Did he say play better defense?
Like you mentioned, lack of communication. Like, why isn't that happening now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a couple of things. You got to communicate. Don't leave guys on the island. Take away tendencies.
Guard your yard.
It's on everybody.
And how can you guys generate offense when threes aren't going down?
Attack the rim.
Attack the paint.
Oh.
Don't settle, things like that.
Let's put you
Are
out.
you guys not doing that enough, you think?
Yeah. I mean,
you can say that.
You can say that tonight. Hindsight is 2020. We could look back and say we should have drove the ball more.
Wow.
All right, we're gonna have Sherrod up here. Here we go.
After the
Sherrod,
Christmas loss, he said people need to take ownership and look themselves in the mirror. Are you surprised that the defensive intensity and focus, attention to detail didn't sustain from Friday to tonight?
Winning in the NBA is hard. We got to understand that. We know that. And everybody is confident in our abilities and what where we can be at as a team. We just got to do it, and hasn't been the best stretch for us. That's okay. Nobody's panicking or anything like that, but we just got to be better.
And then Jordan set a career high in scoring on Friday, tied a couple other personal bests. Big block in the fourth quarter tonight.
Jordan
what have you
sidebars
seen from
are
him
flying
overall this
tonight.
season?
His growth is been on pace of what we want to see. We feel like we're going to really need him to have the success that we want to as a team. So it's about letting him know that he's important and we need him, and it's his job to be ready and stay ready when his time is called.
Last question to Abby and then Jared.
Stay ready.
I'm switching gears too. On a positive note, your rebounding numbers are way up this season. Is that what is that a product of? And is that
I
I'm
think,
falling asleep.
just over the last few years, I probably averaged around 8.5 rebounds. I think it's at like 9.5 now. A lot of the times I'm guarding a big man down there, boxing out with the big guys. So just another way to, assert myself
Help the team.
into the game.
Okay.
Jayson, you're talking about how communication is important for you guys defensively. These last few years, you guys have been just about the best defense in the league. What was the aspect of communication and maybe the work you guys did outside of the game that allowed you to be so consistent? What do you think is the thing that needs to kind of tighten up right now with that?
I think we just got to get back to the basics, man. It's throughout seasons or a season, there's times where, things can get off track. And as professionals, we got to lock back in and get back to our identity, which, very confident that we can. It's just a matter about doing it.
Thank you very much, Jayson Tatum. All right, we're gonna dive into that Tatum response press conference in just a minute. Before we do, we're gonna talk about a couple of our sponsors. First up is our good friends at Game Time. Guys, they say there's no place like home for the holidays. I would actually beg to differ. I would say there's no place like an unbelievable sporting event for the holidays season. And I know Christmas is behind us now, but New Year's is a couple days away. There's a lot of good in the holidays. They go beyond the actual day. It's the holiday season, right? So you've got plenty of basketball games to pick through. You've got hockey. You've got the final week of the NFL regular season next weekend. There's a lot of options out there for sporting events, and Game Time has you covered. New Year's Eve, Celtics, Raptors. Before Boston hits the road, they've got one more home game against Toronto. Bobby's home away from home team is the Raptors. The OGs know that Bobby is massive in Toronto. The get-in price for that one right now is about $168. Again, keep your eyes on Game Time. Use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Those prices may drop right around game time, and maybe you get in for a better deal. And if you're looking to catch the Patriots, I don't know why you would, but if you are looking to catch the final Patriots game of the year, you could probably get into that game for under $50. It looks like it's about 60 right now to get in. No idea yet if Jake May is going to be playing or what Josh Allen's plans are. The Bills have already locked up the number 2 seed. The Patriots, on the other hand, the number 1 pick is on the line next week. All they have to do is lose. Can Sherrod Mayo figure this one out? I'm not sure.
They'll win by 20, Jimmy.
Based on the way the season's gone, the Patriots will figure out a way to win this game and screw it all up. Regardless, if you want to see it live, Game Time's the place to go. It's the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. Filter only. Incredible deals on great seats with Game Time picks. See the view from your seat on your phone before you buy. All-in pricing shows you total cost up front, and you can buy the tickets in seconds with 2 taps. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it, Sherrod? Game time. And what you should do while you're at the game, a little fantasy action. Check out our buddies at Prize Picks. Now, what is Prize Picks, you ask? Well, Prize Picks is the best place to get real money action with over 10 best place to get real money action, sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times. That's not 100, that's 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. And just, like I said, guys, it is the holiday season. We're giving away picks in December, $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guarantees. They also offer weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday, which will be coming up this week. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts, select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. I did my Prize Picks on Christmas Day, made the games more interesting, but I can't say that I succeeded. So back to the drawing board. I think Bobby's got a pretty good grasp on this Prize Picks action. Maybe he can give us a play for New Year's Eve if he has one. I don't think he has one yet, but he might be thinking about maybe what the Celtics can do against this Raptors
I told you
team.
it's been all Wembanyama.
It has been Wembanyama, but I feel like Prize Picks has to be catching on to it at this point. I mean, it's all Wemby all the time. And by the way, Wemby, how about Wemby going out there and playing chess in New York City after
That was great. I would have been there.
Game. Are you a chess guy?
He's got the rest of
Yeah, I'm
the
a
rest
big
of the
chess
league is
guy.
playing checkers. When he's
Bobby
on the
being a
floor, so
chess
he
guy
might well.
is one of the least surprising things. You look like a chess guy. You got the turtleneck going. Looks like you just came from a game of chess, Bobby. Anyways, download the app today and use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. We're going to get some Jaylen Brown sound, actually, Bobby, from the locker room. Now,
Yeah,
Bobby,
he
I
was
want to get
great.
back. I want to get back to you because I think you were going on a little bit about Brown and about how he's kind of been the voice of this team, especially during struggles. Before we get to a sound clip, I don't even know what Amit's going to load for us. But before we do, what stood out to you? What did he have to say in that locker room after this one? And then we're going to talk.
Yeah,
we'll
he
circle
said-
back to Tatum after.
Yeah, I think we got a lot more specifics from Brown, especially since Joe, as I said right before the hit there, talking about not taking away opponents' tendencies. And he's mentioned that a couple times over the last handful of games here. And so I asked Jaylen about that, and he said it's more the communication issue. And we've heard that from a couple different guys that they're not communicating. He said you can try to take away the tendencies, but when the other team's coming at you full speed, it's more about just communicating things. And he said in this game specifically, what they probably should have done more of was help in the lane because the Pacers weren't shooting a lot of threes. I don't think there was a ton of shooting personnel out there for the Pacers either, but they stayed too attached to shooters in this one. And I don't have the total right in front of me right now, but the Pacers only shot 23 threes in this game. So there were certainly more three-point
were
attempts that you
attacking.
could have given up there. Yeah, so let's
Yeah,
say like
Celtics
8 to
shot
10 of
54.
those you help on. You're probably in a better position defense because you got torched in the paint in this one. And that's a little startling that that's not something you can adjust on the fly to. Like the transition stuff's one thing, especially if you're screwing up on offense. I believe in that when it comes to Joe. A three goes down here or there from a guy that you want to let shoot, fine, just like on Christmas. But to get beat downhill over and over again in the half court especially, I mean, that one to end the game there where they're about to sit the starters, Jimmy, and, they hit one shot there, so they let them come back out and try to make a comeback. And Halliburton just goes right by Horford and scores uncontested.
That happened a lot, Bobby.
It's awful. Yeah, it's awful right now. It's repeated stuff. There doesn't seem to be a lot of attention to detail on that end. And I think, going back to a Sherrod, I'm going to put this on coaching a little bit. Like, I was not happy with the way Joe reacted to the defensive struggles going into the last game. And they had one good night, but he goes to the untrained eye comment about, it's easy to say it's defense. It's easy to
Bobby
say it's
can't
effort.
stand this.
But, Jimmy, all the players tonight, it's effort, it's intensity, it's intention to detail. Like they're saying it, not us.
I feel the
So
steam
they're
coming
not
out
going
of
to win
the
a
turtleneck.
championship. They're not going to win a championship this year, Sherrod, without the defensive intensity and effectiveness that we saw last year. And this is closer to a 2023 defense, which still ranked well, but was so inconsistent, and you had so many bad losses because of it that it made them an inconsistent team. And that's what I'm getting a bigger feel for with this group than the intensity and the urgency of last year. And that's understandable, Noah. They come together, lightning in a bottle, new team. Like you have that urgency, that intensity to win it all. The other thing Jaylen said, Jimmy, was that, he thinks that they've had comfort this year. Like they've been too comfortable coming off a championship. So they're not in a good place right now. And none of the teams coming up are going to let them off the hook.
I want to just answer this question because thank you, Christopher Webb. He asked it before we went to Tatum, I think so. Hopefully he's still watching. But question from a Knicks fan. Are you concerned about catching Cleveland for the number 1 spot in the Eastern Conference, or are you confident the Celtics can win the chip no matter what seed they are? Doesn't sound like Bobby's very confident at all right now based on the way the Celtics are playing. I mean, question for all three of you guys. Does seeding matter with the Celtics team, or is it more just figure your ish out, be healthy, and if you do both those things going into the playoffs, it shouldn't really matter who you play or where you play them? Which one is it?
Jimmy, if those two things are happening, your seeding is irrelevant, because even if you begin the series on the road, you have to win one road game to steal home court advantage. There's not a single team in the Eastern Conference that the Celtics will see in the playoffs that I don't feel confident that they can beat them one of those first 2 games on that other team's home floor, particularly if, the Celtics know going into that, the sooner they get that road win and secure home court advantage, the easier their path to getting to the next round will be. No, that to me is not the concern. The bigger concern, and Bobby has alluded to it, and Noah has as well, is their defensive consistency. Because right now we've talked about intensity, we talked about effort, but there has to be a certain level of consistency at that end of the floor that we're just not seeing. And I think a lot of it.
I felt like, Sherrod.
What?
I felt like they thought they were just going to go out and hit a bunch of threes tonight and win this one.
Well, isn't that what they always think? A lot of games like that. That's like 65% of the games they play. They think they can
but
just
it
shoot
felt
away
extra. It felt that like extra that way tonight.
But after the way they absolutely just annihilated them the other night, I could kind of understand why they feel that way. But to me, that's the allure that they have to fight. That's the temptation that they have to be strong-willed against, because it's easy to be seduced by the three-point shot when you have a lot of three-point shooters. But that's not going to win you a championship. You won a championship last year because you figured out how to be an elite offensive team and a top-tier defensive unit when you had to. And that's what we're seeing now, Bobby, and Noah, is more of a domino effect, the negative domino effect of when you don't have Porzingis, when you don't have Drew Holiday, when Al Horford has lost a step or two, so you don't have that 5-man switchability defensively that you're used to. Mm-hmm. Because the play that you pointed out, Bobby, was where Al got beat off the dribble. That was not the only time Al got beat off the dribble in this game.
Yeah, tough game.
In Indiana, if you think back to the playoffs, they tried to make a conscious effort at getting the switch where one of their guards is being defended by Al and attacking that. And Al did a great job, I thought, in the playoffs last year of not allowing that to be himself and his defense to be the weak link. This was not one of those playoff games for Al. He was not very good defensively. Does that mean that you get rid of him or you send him to the end of the bench? No, you just embrace the fact that he wasn't very good defensively, on top of you not having arguably your best interior defender in Porzingis, on top of not having your best perimeter defender in Drew Holiday. So your perimeter defense suffers, your interior defense suffers, and you get a result like this. And so I think, Bobby, to your point, maybe part of the thinking for them that they were going to have to really lean on the three-point shot is because of what they were lacking in terms of personnel defensively. Not believing that they had enough personnel at that end of the floor that was healthy enough that they could hold their own defensively and have an okay game shooting the three-point shot. They felt they probably had to shoot their way to victory in this one because of what they didn't have personnel-wise on the defensive side.
Noah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality is at this point, like, I've said this a bunch of times, but I never want to overreact to 1 or 2 games. And at this point, we have pretty much a month where the defense has slipped, and they're now 8th overall in defensive rating, which is as low as I can remember them being during the regular season in a very long time. And so, yeah, there's no question around like where it is right now. I think the question that probably everybody's curious about is like, is it something that can just be a December issue that you turn it around? And I think if you look at championship teams, like, it's not unusual to have a bad month, but especially when you're coming off of a championship. But at the same time, like, I find it so peculiar that nobody has repeated after winning a championship since 2017. Like so many good teams that have won a championship that everybody goes into the following year and you're all excited about them. Denver is going to be the beginning of a dynasty with Jokic. And not only do they not repeat, but they don't even make it back to the conference finals. It's literally been 7 years since a defending champion has made it back to the conference finals. And I think there's things that the NBA has done to put in place to make it so that it's harder to assemble super teams and all that.
Stat.
Yeah, but at the same time, I'm watching the Celtics team and I'm like, I didn't have them being the top seed in the East this year. I thought they were going to be one of the top seeds, but not number one. And it's kind of like this had to happen for that prediction to be true. And it's not going to just be like they're going to coast year after year. If they had Drew Holiday and Porzingis at full strength, I think I'd be a little bit more surprised. But in the same way, as disappointing as they've looked, and I'm not going to excuse the play because it's, anybody that watched this game in the last 7 games, like defense has been really tough to watch. It almost feels like kind of inevitable just based off of the way the NBA has been over the last decade and the fact that they don't have 2 of their best defenders ultimately. And if there's something mental that teams are not able to replicate when they just won a championship. And maybe that's going to be what separates in history, like the one-time winners and, the dynasties. But right now, I think they're at an inflection point where they could go either direction. But they're looking like every other defending champion that we've seen since the Warriors.
Bobby, Noah.
You're muted, Sherrod.
Oh.
No, it's hunger. You're just not hungry as you used to be. You think you're trying to tell yourself that you're thirsty and you want to win a championship because you've got that thirst for it, but you're playing with house money when you win a championship and you're trying to do it again. Because what's the worst thing that'll happen? You stick with the one championship that you won. And I think the Celtics are realizing just how, from a subconscious standpoint, it's hard to play with that same level of effort and intensity and focus and attention to detail that you had when you were one of 29 teams trying to knock off the defending champs. Now that you're it's harder.
It's the same team. Harder. It's not like you got somebody else hungry for one that hasn't got. It's the same group of guys. They're all.
And it brings,
they're not in the same roles, though, Jimmy. That's the thing. You have the same team, but Derrick White, for example, there's a greater level of expectation. Peyton Pritchard, there's a greater level of expectation. Al Horford, you're hoping that your expectation level is the same, but with him being a year older, he's probably not going to be able to do all the things that he did a year ago. You start going down the line, and you realize that you may have the same personnel, but the roles that guys are asked to play, expected to play, are not the same. And because of that, it's not really the same team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Bobby. I think Jaylen Brown talked a little bit about that, or Tatum earlier this year, about how that they're got a lot of the same players, but they're not the same team because of some of those different dynamics that guys are being asked to play and roles that guys are being asked to fill this year.
Bobby, Noah is reporting team meeting. Players only.
No, will you please set him straight?
I don't mean that in like a dramatic way.
No, but
Tatum said there's been communication issues like 50 different ways in his post-game conference. That's literally all he wanted to say was communication issues.
That's right.
What I was going to get
at something that spills off the floor a little bit. Like
get him, Noah.
You're not everything's completely normal off the floor, and then you go on the court and you decide to go mute. Like I think there might be some conversations to be had about like. We're all talking about, is the desire there? Is the want there? I don't mean players meeting like there's going to be an athletic post-mortem article about it. I mean just a level of individual responsibility that we're not seeing right now.
What I was going to ask Bobby is how difficult of a situation is this for Mazzulla, being that this is probably the most I don't even know what word you want to use because I don't want to over make it
adversity.
We'll call it
adversity, I guess is the word, but I don't know how much adversity really is. But this would fall into that category, I guess, for Mazzulla. Are you interested to see how he handles it and how he kind of either coaches his way out of it or talks his way out of it with the media or handles it? If the losses do, I don't want to say pile up, but if they, they go out west and let's say they split it out west or they lose a few out west, I mean, are you interested to see how he kind of handles that? Because he hasn't really had to deal with this situation as a head coach before.
Yeah, similar to what I said the other day. I don't have a good sense for how he's handling this behind the scenes, but I do think publicly he's tried to deny and deflect issues that they've had throughout the schedule so far, and it's come back to bite him. And I think in this game you had a little bit of both going on. And he said after the game it's been both ends of the court that have hurt them. But in this one, I think you shot way too many threes. I think you didn't attack the basket with enough urgency. And Porzingis' absence hurts you there, as it does on the defensive end. But we talked about it last year. They were able to get by without Porzingis pretty consistently throughout the schedule last year, and they're struggling a lot more with his absence as well as Drew Holiday. So those are major differences, the amount of injuries that you've had here. So I do think there's a few excuses for their play slipping up here, but I haven't seen the level of adjustment to different lineups, different styles that you need to play when you're missing certain guys. And they did a better job of it tonight. I thought they tried a bunch of different things defensively. But again, the fact that you could have switched from going to helping more rather than trying to stay home on shooters on a night where the Pacers didn't shoot many threes. And that goes back to coaching, Jimmy. It's not like the defensive issues hit them late in this game. They were there from the jump. And again, I liked some of the
you were
zone
talking
looks.
about it. Indy was getting basically everything they wanted down low, right? I mean, I think you called it a layup line even at one point, Bobby.
Yeah. So the adjustments weren't there for much of the stretch leading up to tonight. I thought they tried some different things in this game. I guess the one thing I would have done differently is into the fourth quarter, probably closing with Cornette when you're within single digits there rather than Horford. Cornette had 4 blocks in this game. Some good stretches, especially at the start of the fourth quarter. And Horford
closed with Cornette.
Well, Horford almost fouled out of this game, so they almost had no choice. And this was not his night. But, Jimmy, I think it speaks to this coaching staff having a greater focus on offense. You want Horford out there shooting threes, spacing the floor, rather than Cornette out there who can't do that, even if Cornette's giving you better minutes defensively in a game like this. So I thought that was a missed opportunity. And they went to some other stuff. They tried Keita, they tried Walsh, but right now they can't find an answer to the defensive struggles that they're having right now. And, if some of it is motivation, if some of it is effort, and I know Joe was pretty staunch in his denial of that on Friday, I don't know where that's going to come from. Like, it's on Jaylen, it's on Jayson, who I don't think has had the best defensive season. And even Jaylen, I think, has had inconsistent moments. So it's on the leaders of this team to step up and carry them, because we know that this isn't a coaching staff that's going to be overreaching and trying to affect the locker room.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they're going to talk about in the meeting. I do think that it starts at the top. It starts with Tatum and Brown, and the fact that I think both of those guys could be all defensive players at their best. And obviously we haven't seen that in their career, but I think that that's their capabilities. And so when you see, like, tonight, there were multiple plays where, there was a lapse, and if you go back and rewatch it, it's like it was Tatum's lapse, and I don't think it was him more than anybody else, but it does start at the top as far as setting a tone. And I think Drew also cleaned up a lot of their mistakes last season, and they made sure to credit him every time Drew came up or defense came up, that we don't even notice how many things he fixes and he cleans up. And not only has he been dealing with various injuries, but I think even the games that he has played, he hasn't been exactly the same Drew that we saw last season. And I think we all have faith that he'll be able to get back to that. But yeah, there's that element as well of just like him being the kind of the glue guy on that end last year and kind of taking the reins and helping a lot. And also Porzingis was available for the majority of last year's season. And then in the playoffs, you don't have that question around, like, there's not going to be a desire thing. There's not going to be an effort thing, right? But I think during the regular
you can
season,
use Horford more.
He was a cheat code a little bit around the rim. And I was surprised when he joined the team that how much he was able to impact things on that end, I didn't expect it, honestly. And he hasn't really been a factor this season.
Yeah,
I do think they're going to miss those guys for a little bit longer here too.
And the thing about Drew, his absence creates a domino effect, because remember, Derrick White, one of the best things about Derrick White as a defender is his ability to be a help side defender. He can't do that when Drew's not there. So when, again, you're losing not just two really good perimeter defenders, but two of your best help side defenders who have cleaned up a lot of mistakes and miscommunications that we've seen, over the past year and some change. And so it's when you start to really dissect the missing pieces, the communication breakdowns, it's not all that shocking that that they're in a stretch like this. But something that, Joe talked about, earlier about being excited about this West Coast trip coming up. I am too, because this is going to tell us a lot about where this team's at in terms of their championship pedigree. Championship teams will find a way to be very successful on a trip like this when pretty much everyone outside of their world is looking at them with a skeptical eye about them as champions, looking at them as though they're no different than the last 7-8 NBA champions as far as being really good, but not good enough to repeat. Are they going to use this West Coast trip as a sample size of their ability to repeat as champions? Because if they run the tables, then we're going to look at December as just a mere speed bump along the way. But if they struggle and go 500 or below 500, then there are going to be some serious questions and doubts about whether this team can actually repeat, which is a far different conversation and far different narrative than there was at the beginning of the season and frankly the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season.
Let's hear from Jaylen here.
Emphasize that we got to get back to emphasizing the defensive side of the ball. It's kind of slipped over the last few games, our intensity, and teams are pressuring us, being physical with us. We got to do some of the same stuff back to them.
Reach, Brown,
we did some good stuff in spots, but just not enough.
It was a big part of your success last year, your guys' defensive consistency. Why doesn't it feel as consistent this year, you think?
I'm not sure. We've had some great moments this season, and maybe some comfort has slipped in. But, I mean, offensively, we're fine. I just think defensively, we got to find ways to get more stops and be more consistent, protecting the basket, helping each other, communicating, and we just haven't emphasized that enough.
Joe's talking about tendencies, taking guys' tendencies away and that kind of being an issue for you guys at times. What kind of goes into the preparation for taking away those tendencies, and what's kind of gone wrong with that at times?
I think communicating, tendencies is one thing, but it's a lot different when you're out there and they're coming at you full speed, especially a team like Indiana. I think you got to be more alert and communicate to help each other. It seems like they got a lot of layups because we weren't recognizing where we can help from. They didn't shoot a lot of threes, so that means they shouldn't have got so many layups. We could have protected the basket a little bit better, and we didn't tonight. So I think we see it. I think recognizing, where we can be better at, and we build from there. We got a tough stretch coming in January, so we know we got time to hang our head. We just got to get up and be ready for that.
Jaylen Brown, the voice of, would you say the voice of reason? Whoops, sorry, too much going on. Is he the voice of the team right now, Bobby? I know I think you kind of mentioned that earlier, but it seems to be that he's the one that's least likely to give like the cookie cutter response or to, sort of let the team off like on the easy, let them off easy. It's still a lot of we, and I know Xanis hates that, but I think we is fair to say in a lot of these situations, because you are saying it's the team. It's not one person. It's not just me or just another guy.
It's a full team.
Collectively.
Full team.
Yeah, and especially defensively, it's typically a team-wide thing too. It's a mindset. And yeah, that might simplify it a little bit. And it's obviously more than just how bad do you want it. You have to go out there and play the right style, and that's when coaching comes into hand, and that's when Joe will say that he has the trained eye and I don't, which is fair. But when the players, I oftentimes listen to the postgame to wonder if players say similar things, and that tells me that that's kind of what the coach said after the game to them, right? And that's kind of top of mind. So if a lot of players come out saying effort or intensity or XYZ, sometimes I tend to think that that's coming from the coach to them prior to the team, going away for the rest of the night. Now,
yeah, and to Noah's point earlier, I sense more urgency from Tatum here, and I like the stuff Brown said, but those guys are part of the breakdowns and inconsistencies here too. So some of it has to be going out there and actually doing it rather than saying it. And they've had a couple opportunities to right themselves here. I mean, that Orlando loss was awful. You could have chalked it up to Tatum being out, but that's a wake-up call right there. 2 losses in 3 games, and then Philadelphia, Brown started that game horribly. Tatum and him try to pick it up late, but too little, too late, and you lose that one. So that's 3 out of 4 right there. And then you shouldn't relax off one win against a shorthanded Pacers team. I don't get the mentality right now that's causing some of this inconsistency, because I feel like there's been a handful of losses already now that you would have said, all right, slip up, move past it, play better the next game, and you're all right. Like, that's what they did last year. No, Lakers loss. I know the Hawks losses were bad late in the year, and there were a couple other ones, but they'd usually just move right past it and play better. And the depth, I think, changing lineups, there's a lot of reasons that I think they've been more inconsistent this year that are legitimate excuses. But the intensity and the effort and the defensive issues, I don't think there's much of an excuse for here. So I'm concerned. I've been concerned for a little while now. It's not going to get easier. I don't think they're going to get healthier again here. You got to be cautious with Porzingis and Holiday and play the long game with those guys. So got to tap into your depth. I'll give Mazzulla credit for that with Walsh, and Cade has gotten a couple more opportunities here the last few games, but they couldn't save you. And it's on the guys, the regular contributors here, to make this thing better. And it's just not happening right now.
Jaylen, I think, touched on what may very well be at the crux of was problematic for them, and that's comfort. The fact that they're very comfortable with the knowledge of being the defending champion, knowing that their season, the narrative won't be decided until April, May, and June. And are they giving everything they have right now to get there and be in the best position? I don't think so. And that's because they're comfortable. And, Jaylen did a good job of couching that and making it so that that's not the reason, but he put it out there. he made that when he was explaining, what some of the potential issues this team may be dealing with. That was one of them. And I think it is one of them. I've seen defending champions play very much like the Celtics are playing. They have all the talent in the world. They can beat any team by 30, 40 points on any given night. And then when you start looking at these inexplicable losses, they become a little easier to explain when you acknowledge the fact that these are defending champions, and this is what defending champions, unfortunately, do more times than not. You talk to anyone who's won a title, and they'll tell you it's harder to defend it than it was to win it. And the Celtics look like they're struggling to figure out the best way to go forward and best position themselves to repeat.
It makes me think, too, Noah, something we talked about early on that maybe gave us a sign that this was going to happen is all of those awful starts that Pritchard saved them from. And this was almost another game like that where the Pacers smoked the starting lineup. Pritchard comes in, hits a bunch of threes, starts like 7 of 8, 7 of 9. And there's greater intensity, there's greater pace, all of that. Even the defense, I feel like at times has improved into those second units. So they've gotten away with a few of those early in the schedule where Pritchard's come out and saved them, or maybe some great shooting saved them. And the problem, I think, to some degree here is that they're a team that's more offensive minded than defensive minded. And the defense should be able to save you in some of these close games that they've lost.
Well, think about it like this, Bobby. I mean, I think you're spot on. And I think most people would probably agree. They're an offensive minded team. They're a 3-point shooting team. What's the biggest difference between Friday's game and tonight's game with the Celtics team? It's that the shots fell early in that first game. They shot over 40% from 3 on Friday. The scoring was there. They got out to a very early lead. I think they kind of sucked the life out of Indy early on, who was a bit undermanned, and that was the end of it, right? I mean, that's kind of how that game went. Tonight it's a different story.
Indiana, yeah.
Tonight's a different story. They started off cold. What was Tatum to start this game?
0 of 7? 5 from the field?
Yeah.
Or did they keep going for a little bit?
Well, from 3, wasn't he 0 for 7 or something like crazy like that? Something like that. Tatum, point I'm trying to make is their defense, they're not relying on their defense. They're relying on their offense. And if their offense isn't there,
he started 0 for 6.
It's a completely different game. So it's live by the 3, die by the 3. I'm not hearing a lot of hate about too many 3-pointers right now across the league. I'm not hearing about how it's all one-sided. Teams are figuring out ways to beat the Celtics team. If the Celtics want to just shoot threes and rely on the 3, and they think that they can win just by doing that, I think they're finding out, maybe it's good they're finding out now and not later, that that's not going to be the case. There are going to be nights where the shots aren't going to be falling, where Al Horford has a completely
you know
off
what it
night.
is, Jimmy? They're not as good of a 3-point shooting team this year, and we've talked about that multiple times. Hauser's worse. Drew's worse. Brown's worse. A bunch of guys are worse. And Tatum's super inconsistent.
We talked about which guys are having a better year this year and last year, and it's interesting, like little assignment to go through. And yeah, if you want to talk about outside shooting or 3-point shooting, we certainly can do that. But Hauser's pretty obvious why he's off is because he can't stay on the court, so he can't get into a rhythm. Brown and Tatum, I mean, people want to talk about Tatum's improved shot. Not anymore. I don't think people are talking about that anymore. Brown's, it's tough to talk negative about Brown right now. He's had a couple of games here where he's kind of put the offense on his back, and I like what Brown gives them and three levels of scoring. He doesn't need to be an elite outside shooter because he does have the ability, and he does, I think, put in some effort at times. More so this year, I've seen it, to try to score, be more physical, get the and ones. He did that late in this game tonight a couple of times, where some of the other guys are relying a lot on that 3-point shot. And it isn't falling. And when it isn't falling, what's happening? Teams are going to get out in transition. A team like the Pacers, who like to run, and they're not trying to beat you 3-point shot for 3-point shot. They're going inside on you. Whether multiple guys. Siakam was getting involved early on. Who's the other guy there? The big guy. He's been on the team forever. That I'm blanking on his name.
Turner.
Yeah, Turner. Turner's getting physical down low like he always has been. That Pacers team, you can't disrespect them because they have the ability to turn things around very quickly. And I think the Celtics saw it tonight. And if you're going to just rely on the three and not play defensively on the other end, then that's what's going to happen. And so we're starting to see that more and more. The untrained eye can see that. That's not something that you need to be a astute basketball mind to see guys relying too much on the 3-pointer and then watching as the opponent goes down on the other end and, does their thing. And if the Celtics aren't scoring, then they're not going to be able to get back in transition. So that makes defense more difficult for them. So it's almost like the chicken or the egg situation. But to your point, Bobby, their defense is not bailing them out.
Yeah, I mean, they're middle of the pack right now in the NBA in 3-point shooting. They've been hovering between 15th and 16th place. So what was once like a cheat code for them to be able to make up for mistakes or make up for other areas of the game where they were getting, out hustled or rebounding or turnovers or whatnot, it's not anymore. And so it is exposing who they are and what problems they may have been dealing with even beforehand. But I think the thing I appreciate is that we were talking about, a couple weeks ago, that it felt like there was like a certain denial to, at least to us, maybe to them within themselves, but at least to us, that there was any sort of problem. And I know people don't love like watching post-game pressers after losses because it feels like you're just saying, we got to be better. But I like what they said. I think that the reality is, yeah, I think if you go back and watch some of these possessions, like it is defensive miscommunications. Like I'm literally watching two guys go to the same guy and leave somebody wide open underneath the basket, right? So they called it for what it was. I think Jaylen has found a certain calm about him after losses that he hasn't had in the past. And I think it's a good thing. I think there's a certain leadership quality that you see that he's evolved. But I think when you watch his post-game pressers from this year and everything that he just said, like, I don't mind that he's saying that they're comfortable because they are. We all can see that. And so naming it, maybe you'll get aggregated and Jaylen Brown calls the Celtics comfortable will be a headline on NBA Central. But I think the reality is that he's saying it to us, but he's also saying it to his teammates. And we know that every time one of these guys, answers our questions, they're answering the questions to us, but also to one another. And that's a big part of why they sometimes hold back to us. And so nobody said anything disrespectful, but at the same time, I think, there's a sense of like there is an inflection point, and I think in 2 weeks we'll have a very good sense of this team. And I think if they continue to lose half their games and play poor defense, then I'm willing to say like I don't think this is the team that they were. Otherwise, I kind of feel like this was an inevitable stretch to happen at some point, and it's kind of a good time for it to happen. Like it's December; it's kind of the perfect time to have a bad month, honestly.
Yeah, it's the holidays. People are like quick to forgive. Question for Sherrod from Eleanor. Pacers are not even a physical team. What will happen the next time the Celtics play the next physical team, a much tougher team like Memphis, Orlando, OKC, or the Rockets? Well, we're going to see the Rockets coming up here, so we'll get a good idea of that.
Yeah.
Sherrod,
they're going to an all-out brawl tonight, by the way, too.
What was that, Bobby?
They're going to an all-out brawl with the Heat tonight, too. Thompson
did they
body slam hero to the floor, 7 ejections, and the Heat won a thriller.
physicality is picking up. There might be a little memo going across the league soon. We're starting to see some skirmishes.
Good for the ratings.
Great for the ratings. Yeah, maybe keep it up. Well, we just saw Orlando, and that was a physical team. We saw what Orlando did to Boston, undermanned, by the way. Memphis, same thing. Memphis came in, beat the Celtics. Starting to see a trend here. OKC, we know how talented OKC is, and we're going to get the Rockets. So, Sherrod, I mean, are the Celtics just going to get punked here every time a big bad physical team comes into play, or what's the sitch?
Until they decide that they're not going to continue to get punked, they will. Because remember, this was the way to beat the Celtics before they won a championship. Be physical, bang them, force the game to just kind of muck the game up a little bit. And teams are going back to that old playbook, and it's working. The Celtics, this is what happens when you lean so heavily on the three-point shot. You all of a sudden go from a team that plays with force to a team that plays with finesse. And when you play with finesse, you're going to have nights where you get your head cracked when teams are going to get physical with you. The Celtics need to get back to doing those little things like driving at the rim, Jaylen Brown being aggressive off the dribble, Tatum looking to finish at the rim as opposed to settling for long two-pointers and three-pointers. The Celtics, they have, and Tatum talked about this in his postgame, they need to be the initiator. They need to be the aggressor. That doesn't mean you're body slamming people, but you know what? When you get
Punch
a guy
first,
off his,
start strong. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if you got a defender and you get him off his feet, rather than step to the side and shoot a three, how about dribbling into the paint and
There was a
forcing
play
the
tonight.
defense to suck in?
There was a play tonight, Sherrod, where they got Hauser the ball on the baseline. He was wide open, and he ran out to the three-point line to shoot a
He
three.
shot it, and it was short. And it was short, rather than just taking the little 2-foot floater right through the lane.
Yeah,
It was a great sequence, except for the fact that he decided to take a three-point shot as opposed to a lightly / open layup. That's the mentality of this team. They would rather take a three-pointer than a two-pointer 9 out of 10 times. And they need to get away from that on those nights where the shot's not falling. They need to mix it. They need to mix it up more. They need to be more balanced. And that doesn't mean you take same number twos as threes. But if you miss 15 of 19 threes, you might want to look to attack the rim, especially when you've got two guys like Tatum and Brown who have the ability to not only beat their guys off the dribble, but actually finish at the rim or get contact and get to the free throw line. They're just not utilizing all the tools they've got in the toolbox. And that to me is one of the more frustrating parts about this stretch, because it would be one thing if these teams were playing the best basketball of the season and they just found a way to eke out a win. The Celtics are enabling these teams to be better than they are. They're putting themselves in positions to where they're basically spotting these teams opportunities and points to beat them when they shouldn't do that. If you're going to get beat by a team, do that. Have them beat you. Don't beat yourself and position those teams to then beat you.
Let's see what Jaylen
says. It's no different. Every season has its own challenges. Every season presents its own adversity. You got to meet it. You can't think that last year is this year or this year is going to be last year. So you got to come out ready to play basketball. Whatever happens, happens. I think we're all set. Like everything's supposed to go exactly how it went last year. And that's not the case. It's not going to be the case. It's different. And we got to be able to meet that level, grow as a team, and be ready when it matters most.
And be ready when it matters most. I like the idea, but the problem is getting to when it matters most. You don't want to
It's a long way to go.
It's a long way to go. And if you're focusing so much on being your best when it matters most, you're not going to be the best version of yourself when you get there, because you will have suffered several losses that you should not have suffered because you're focused on what's down the road as opposed to this mediocre team in front of you.
Yeah, and Tuesday will be telling. No, I think the Raptors play them well. I think they play them tough. They almost beat them last game.
They're a physical team. They want to be physical.
Yeah, Winnick's back. Bruce Brown came back tonight for the first time this year, and Scotty Barnes is back in their lineup as well now. So they've struggled immensely. I don't know if they won tonight, but
they're on a 10-game losing streak.
Or 10, yeah. So if you overlook them, they could catch you off guard. I don't know if they can beat you. But this could be another game that's closer than it should
They
be.
can beat
They
you.
lost by 29 tonight.
All of these teams
They
can beat
gave up-
everybody.
They gave up. The Raptors gave up 155 tonight to the Grizzlies. They lost.
That's the most point. Isn't that
they
the
lost-
most? That might be the most the Grizzlies have ever scored.
They lost to the Hawks tonight too. That was a couple of days ago, but 136 tonight. So yeah, they're not playing well, but they could catch you off guard. I mean,
that was
easy to
that
get
was
from Minnesota.
Previous game. Sorry, what am I looking at the wrong?
Yeah,
game?
easy to get up from Minnesota. Easy to get up for all those games coming up here. But I think Tuesday will be pretty telling just how refocused they are off this one.
Yeah. So I mean, if the Celtics are looking to right the ship offensively, that's one thing, but defensively, it's another story because this Rockets team, I don't even know. Talk about a team that's not playing defense. They give up 136 tonight.
Raptors.
They gave up the Raptors. Sorry, 136 tonight against the Hawks, 155 against the Grizzlies on the 26th, and they gave up 139 against the Knicks on Monday. I mean, in a 6-day span, I can't imagine many more teams giving up more points than Toronto has right now. So I'm not sure how much of a test Tuesday is going to be for this Celtics team, or really what they can get out of it. It should be, put it this way: if Tuesday comes and goes and the Celtics lose that one, I better see panic buttons being smashed, because that would be unbelievable to me. I don't anticipate that happening. It's a weird time, 3:00 start on a Tuesday, New Year's Eve. Again, hit up Game Time if you're looking to go to that one. But I'm not too concerned about the Raptors. It's one of those that's like,
I am.
They win the game. You win the game. Nothing really comes of it. You lose the game. It's a problem. So it's kind of a lose-lose for the Celtics. I don't think anyone really cares what happens if they win, but then you go out west and it's a different story. But you'd like to see them at least go on the road playing the right type of basketball, and that's really what this is about, is getting back to playing. You can't cheat the game. You can maybe get away with some wins here and there. You can steal some, but at some point it's going to come back to bite you. And I think the Celtics are finding out that they're not going to be able to cheat the game. They're not going to be able to win a championship by just out shooting 3-pointers than the opposition. It would be nice.
Work.
It would be nice if that was the case. And I think there was like a 2-week span where everybody around the NBA thought that might actually happen. And like the math was just going to math and the Celtics were going to shoot their way to a championship. I don't think that's reality. I really don't. That's why I said, let everyone slow down here. Stop trying to change the game and all these cockamamie ideas. Let's just let water find its level again. And is that the saying? I think it is.
Yes.
It is today, Jimmy.
Yeah, it is
Welcome.
today. Homeschooler coming in hot there. And I think we're starting to see that. So you hope that they can sort of right things a little bit here.
The last thing I'm trying to say is that they're still on a 59-game win pace. And I know this has been a bad stretch, but it's not like all year they came out the gate and the defense was non-existent and everything was terrible. Like, they're on a 59-game win pace in the same way that I've seen countless fans say, I'm not really tuning into these games. I'm going to wake up in April. And even though you're a diehard Celtics fan and you've been wanting to win so bad and they finally won and now you're not watching. And it doesn't really make sense to me, but it's human nature, right? I think in the same way, there's a little bit of that in that locker room where they're like, they finally won. It's harder to get up after that.
But people still hated on them, Noah. People were still doubting them when they won. They said, they didn't play anybody good. Right. It was an easy path. Tatum got clowned.
Yeah, but you won the championship. I think we see that stuff louder than it actually is because we're so in the media world. They won the championship and they celebrated all summer and they watched the banner raising. And a month ago, they were in D.C. celebrating it. Literally last month, they were in D.C. celebrating it with the president, right? So, at the end of the day, there is a certain element that is just human nature is human nature. It's without fail, right?
Sure.
And so I think the
it's
same
mental,
way that everybody,
right? It's a mental game.
It's mental, and in the same way that everybody's waiting for the spring, they clearly were too. And now the question is, okay, it bit you. You couldn't get away with the fact that you didn't have the same level of intensity and focus and attention to detail and all these other things. Can you respond? And that's what separates, I think, the great teams from the ones that won one championship. I mean, any team that wins a championship is great, but the ones that are remembered in history are the ones that win multiple. And I think they want to be that group. And I'm not shocked that this month happened because it just follows the pattern of how this league works. But whether or not, I think I don't want to keep making this 4-game road trip to me is going to tell us everything about this team's identity this season, because you're playing Houston, Oklahoma City, Denver, which is still a team that's really had you in a tough spot over these last few seasons, and Minnesota, who I think is still one of the best defensive teams in the league despite their struggles. And so it really could not be a better 4-game road trip as far as just revealing what this team is made of. And I resonated with Joe. I'm excited for it.
I thought they'd hit this skid earlier, to be honest with you. I thought they would come out at the start of the season, or certainly in the month of November, and have a stretch like this where they lose 2 out of 3, 4 out of 6. And when that didn't happen, I'm thinking damn, maybe they are built to win this championship a second year in a row. And then December rolls around and they look exactly like most defending NBA champions at the start of the season. Now, to Noah's point and to Joe's point, are they able to right the ship? Are they able to put together a sample size here, to start 2025 that reminds us that they are the defending champions and that they're literally built as they were a year ago, and thus feel they will repeat as champions? I'm curious as hell to see what happens, because this is the truth telling portion of the narrative for the Celtics. We're gonna find out whether you are who you say you are. And that to me is very exciting.
Can't bullshit a bullshitter, right? You can't bullshit a bullshitter, man.
Listen, this is where all your cards are on the table, and we're gonna know exactly what you're holding in your hand. And are you really holding those aces like you say you are? Or are you really holding some, deuces?
Yeah, what you got under there. All right, we're gonna go final thoughts here. We want to thank everybody for tuning in. We're over an hour and a half in. Noah and Bobby are at the Garden. They're gonna have a video or two from this one. But we got a New Year's Eve tilt against Toronto, the lowly Raptors. How far they have fallen, Bobby. I'm sorry to say, 3
It
o'clock.
is sad.
Afternoon game. If you're working on New Year's Eve, which I imagine most people are, it's not a holiday. I can't really figure out why it's a 3 o'clock game, but it is.
Because they don't want people to be traveling around. It's because it's New Year's Eve.
Okay, they just want people to get in and out and not be out doing crazy stuff at midnight. Well, they can't stop us. They can't stop us, Sherrod. They can try, but they can't stop us. For those of you working, hoping you can get out early and catch the game. We'll start with Noah. Any final thoughts from either this game or looking forward to whatever is on your mind, I guess?
I feel like I kind of gave my final thoughts there.
I think you kind of
I'm excited.
did.
I'm going on the trip, so I'm excited to see. I've never been to a lot of these cities, so
you're going on the trip.
On a personal level, I'm excited.
Nice.
Yeah,
what's the first stop?
Noah will be in Houston on Friday, and then we'll both be in OKC and Denver, and probably
With
gonna
Joe
have
Sway.
a little reunion show with Joe Sway down there on Sunday.
We're getting Joe Sway on the show on OKC, 100%. Noah, you're gonna love Houston. Beautiful.
I got a couple of those. I famously love ugly, boring cities, so I think I'll probably like it.
Wow, shots fired. Are you gonna go cowboy hat or anything like that? You're gonna go you're gonna buy into the Texas culture at all?
No.
Don't do it. Don't do it. No.
Don't.
That could
Bobby
be a really
would.
interesting game.
I don't dress thematically
Bobby
for the city that I'm in.
Bobby takes on the culture. When Bobby goes from state to state, he embraces the culture. I can't wait to see OKC Bobby. I just can't wait to see OKC Bobby.
Joe Sway's gonna give me some advice. Yeah,
he's got something in store
Denver.
for us. And Joe Sway. Joe Sway's growing out the hair. I think I saw.
He's got the goatee starter kit.
He hasn't found a barber out in OKC apparently. Yeah, he's looking for one.
Yeah, that goatee starter kit is not cool though. We had to talk about that.
You did? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So if he shows
small
up,
footnote from this game, Jimmy, but Walsh got involved again. I like it. I'm going to keep my Walsh stock and continue to believe in him even through some of the struggles here. I love his game. I love the potential he could bring. I talked to him a little bit the other night and said he's starting to change some things defensively in his approach, some stuff he borrowed from Holiday. I think Joe mentioned that the other night too. He got 2 threes to fall in that game. So not as much offensive impact in this one, but glad he could get in there. I feel like his defense has improved. The rebounding's been outstanding, and just looking for them to find some more creative ways to get him involved offensively. I don't think he should just be standing in the corner taking threes. And if those fall, that he's great. If they don't, he's on the bench again. I think I'm starting to believe in him more than anyone else off that bench as their depth wing. And Peterson had that nice stretch. I don't know why he hasn't been more involved since then, but it feels like they're buying into Walsh. He hasn't gone back to Maine. It doesn't feel like he's going to this year. And we spotted his parents here tonight too, who I've been close with since the draft, and they watched the show as well. So thank you to John and Sandra, who love the Garden Report.
Well, now it makes sense. Did somebody ask? Okay, somebody asked about Walsh. I think maybe
It was me.
Noah. Can you explain Joe's response? Was he saying that Walsh is getting?
We
playing
actually
time?
caught up about his response after the press conference, which I'll leave between us. But
Okay.
he just said
'Cause I couldn't
he just
didn't.
I think I started asking him like maybe what about Walsh was making him play 20 minutes the last 2 games, and he said because they're down 2 players.
Right.
Which
I
they
thought
have
that was
been.
like a.
They've been down 2 players multiple times this season, and they have not turned to him. That's what I was more curious about, but it wasn't that relevant of a question, so I wasn't gonna start doing a one-on-one with him at the press conference. But I'm just curious because I think defensively he looks like a different player than he did honestly even earlier this season and last season, and I think that's a big bright spot here, despite this month.
Absolutely. I mean, again, that's the silver lining. Again,
I'm just trying to find some solace in that press conference.
Of course, and you don't want to see starters go down, but it does give guys an opportunity to step up, and opportunity meets preparation equals success. So if those guys are doing everything they can to prepare, and Bobby's out of here apparently, those guys are doing everything they can to prepare for the opportunity. Credit to them for maximizing it, and it can only pay dividends down the road if there are situations where guys are going to take some breaks down the stretch, or if there are more injuries. If Walsh is a guy that Joe feels like he can depend on, you can tell he's looking for a guy. He's looking for a guy at the end of that bench that he can turn to and say, go, like, we need 5 minutes, we need whatever. And right now it looks like Walsh has a heads up on some of those other players, and rightfully so. He's going in there and he's playing hard, and it might not always look the smoothest or the cleanest, but it's not due to a lack of effort. If that's what people are concerned about with this team right now, it's not due to anything like that. So the more burn he gets, the clearer picture you'll get on what he can provide to you, and the more comfortable he'll feel and understand his role, where it might not just be standing in the corner. So that's it for us, Sherrod. You got anything else, or we'll just
No, we can end it on that. Other than if as far as Jordan Walsh, utilizing the way that Doc Rivers used Avery Bradley early on, having just moving without the ball, getting him the ball where he can finish at the rim, draw contact, but get him involved offensively other than just being a catch and shoot guy, because that's not who he is.
Agreed. That was my favorite player as a kid. So
who was?
I love Avery Bradley.
Oh, Avery Bradley.
Yeah, I love Avery Bradley.
Avery's my guy.
Backdoor cut in the game, Avery Bradley. It's just come around the behind baseline, boom, get the ball.
There was nothing like watching him pick up full court. Nothing like it.
Full court. There was a time where he was the guy that you did not want to. If you were an NBA guard, they would say, "Yeah, Avery Bradley. He'll rip me."
Yeah.
Like, nobody wanted to go up against Avery Bradley.
You get the ball inbounded to you. You see Avery Bradley's on it. You're waiting for the inbounder to get inbound so you can give him the ball.
We'll wrap it, but I remember when the Celtics re-signed Avery Bradley to a 4-year, $32 million deal, and people were like, "Wow, that seems like it could be a lot of money." Like, that's how much the NBA has changed since
that was a big money deal.
Yeah, that was like a big deal. 4 years, $32 million. Now it's like a 1 year, $32 million.
That's Peyton Pritchard money.
Dude, some of those basketball players got to be punching air, being like, dude, if I was like 4 or 5 years later or younger, I'd be making whatever. It is what it is.
I think they're taking it out as commentary in their commentary. Like, I think that you can sense some of that frustration when they're talking about today's generation.
You can. That's it for us, guys. Again, the Celtics dropped 123 to 114 in the Pacers. They followed 23-9. It's been a bit of a skid this month, but they're going to try to close out the month and the year on a high note in Boston against the Raptors. 3:00 game. Bobby and Noah will be there. Sherrod, Sherrod's all over the map. He might be there. He's going to swing by, make an appearance. We're going to be going strong after this one. We want to say, for those who can't make the show because of the timing, Happy New Year. We hope everybody had a great 2024 and even better 2025, health and happiness and all those good things. We're going to bounce. Jackson, hit me with the outro.
No one's sneaking a vegan brownie by me, I'll tell you that.
Okay, you know what, John? We're gonna do it.
You have to feel that way too, Bobby.
I have to feel that way.
Let's fight out over and make Luke your first center.
Bobby, we gave you Luke an hour early. We're not going to end this on a damn conversation about Luke